Hello, this is Kurt Schroeder, a cropping systems agronomist with the University of Idaho. I'm going to be presenting a summary of results from some small plot trials to optimize production of winter pea and winter cover crops. Much of this work was done by Sagat Biskota, a PhD graduate student in my program. Following this short presentation will be an additional summary of a pea forage project that was done by Rebecca McGee with USDA ARS in Pullman. For the winter pea portion of the project, we are looking at several agronomic factors. The first of which is seeding date, where we are looking at 3 dates, either late September, mid-October, and then late October, with the last planting being about as late as we felt we could get away with, and was really intended to be a dormant seeding. We had several different seeding rates, which included 6, 8, 10, and 12 plants per square foot, or seeds per square foot. Fertilizer, so either no fertilizer or adding some starter fertilizer, which was comprised of 20 pounds of phosphorus and 20 pounds of sulfur, which was banded below the seed at planting, and then using 2 varieties, Wyndham and Blaze. The locations included Genesee, Idaho, as well as St. John, Washington. Both locations were previously cropped to spring wheat. Genesee, Idaho is in a little bit higher rainfall zone in our region, is annually cropped. The St. John location is typically a winter wheat, spring wheat fallow rotation. So we were growing the winter peas in place of fallow in this particular cropping system. The measurements included emergence. So we did an emergence in the fall and also again in the spring. Again, looking at winter survival, recording vine length, canopy height. We did seed yield, seed size, and also collected a number of moisture measurements using a delta T PR tube moisture probe, and this was done at weekly intervals. This graph shows the plant density from our trials in 2019, and it is differentiated between the planting dates, either early, mid, or late planting, and then the 2 locations, Genesee and St. John. And then the different bars represent the different seeding rates of either 6, 8, 10, or 12 seeds per square foot. And you can see that regardless of planting date or location, there's an incremental increase in the plant density with regard to increasing seeding rates. And in most cases, there was significantly improved plant stands with the greater seeding rates, with only a few cases where the 10 and 12 seeds per square foot were not significantly different from each other. Despite the increased plant density, there was rarely a significant impact on yield. So here we show the data for Genesee, yield for 2019 and 2018. You'll notice that for 2018, we lacked the 12 seeds per square foot treatment. We did not add that until the 2019 season, and that will be repeated again in 2020. But you can see that in every case, there was no significant difference in the yield between seeding rates, with the exception of our late September. So this would be our early seeding in 2018, where we saw significantly higher yields with our 8 and 10 seeds per square foot compared to 6 pea seeds per square foot. Similar results were observed in St. John for the late September or early planting dates, again with the 8 and 10 seeds per square foot being the most advantageous in respect to yield in 2018, and in 2019 there being no difference between the seeding rates. However, at the mid-October and late October seeding dates in St. John, there was more variability in the results, with higher seeding rates generally being more favorable for improved yields, particularly with the late seeding in 2019 with the 10 and 12 seeds per square foot resulting in significantly higher yields than 6 or 8 seeds per square foot. Seeding date had a more profound impact on yield than we observed with the seeding rates. In this graph, we show the different seeding dates that we used in the study. The black bars indicating our late September or our earliest seeding date, the yellow bars indicating the mid-October seeding date, and the white bars indicating the late seeding date, which was basically as late as we thought we could plant in the fall and was intended to be a dormant seeding. In this graph, we have data for both 2018 and 2019, as well as Genesee on the left and St. John on the right. So starting with 2018, and for Genesee, we see that there's a substantial decrease in yield with delayed seeding at the mid and late seeding dates. In St. John in 2018, we also see the highest yield at the earliest seeding date, with substantially lower yields at the mid and late October seeding dates, although not much of a difference between those two later seeding dates. However, in 2019, we saw substantially different results, with seeding date having much less of an impact on the overall yield, with the mid seeding date in the mid-October having the highest yield of both locations. However, the fall in which these plots were planted was very different. With the fall of 2017, we had good seed zone moisture at all planting dates, including our early planting date in September. However, in the fall of 2018, we had very dry conditions throughout the entire month of October, and the rain did not start falling until the latter part of the month, resulting in similar dates of emergence for all of the planting dates. So to briefly summarize the winter pea agronomy work, we found that the early planting in 2018 resulted in a higher yield, and as we delayed the seeding date, the yields proportionally declined. But in 2019, the yields were not substantially different, with the mid-October seeding date being the highest yielding, but not substantially different than the early and late seeding dates. But again, that fall of 2018, we had very dry conditions. The addition of starter fertilizer, so our phosphorus and sulfur application, had no effect on yield or quality at either location or seeding date. The seeding rates of 10 and 12 seeds per square foot most frequently resulted in the highest seed yield, and these higher seeding rates would also be more advantageous with regard to managing weeds or competition with weeds. So these would probably be the more desirable rates to use in the region. And finally, we found that agronomic practices did not influence water consumption in these trials. For the winter cover crop portion of the trials, we wanted to look at different combinations of crop species to identify those that had the highest yield, but also the highest forage quality. And so we wanted to look at a number of different crop species and look at them in different mixes. So the species that we looked at included winter barley, winter oat, winter pea, crimson clover, balanza clover, and radish. And you can see the varieties that we used for each of those to the right. We want to combine these in all combinations possible, but to minimize the number of combinations, we combined the crimson clover, balanza clover, and radish into a single mix. So the standalone crops included winter barley, winter oat, winter pea, and then the clover, the two clovers and radish as indicated on the right. And then we had all two-way mixes, three-way mixes, and at the very bottom a four-way mix that included all of the species that we were examining in this trial. Similar to the winter pea trials, the cover crop studies were conducted in Genesee and St. John, with the St. John location being shown in the photo to the right. The data that we collected included emergence, total biomass, and forage quality, with the forage quality parameters including crude protein, neutral detergent fiber, acid detergent fiber, and lignin. In the interest of time, I will only be showing the cover crop yields for Genesee in detail. This graph shows the overall biomass production expressed as a fresh weight for each of the different cover crop species and mixes for 3 harvest dates, which included May 30th, June 13th, and July 2nd, which is the gray bar. So you can see that in every case there was an increase in biomass production, which is not too unexpected. And we are still working through deciphering the differences in biomass production between these different mixes and species. But it should be noted that those mixes where winter pea was part of the component were among the highest yielding cover crops in the trial. The overall yields across all cover crop mixes are shown here. At Genesee, there was a substantial increase in the total fresh weight yield between the 3 dates, with the May 30th date having a yield of approximately 2,000 pounds per acre, increasing to over 6,000 pounds at the June 13th date about 2 weeks later, and then finally over 12,000 pounds per acre on the July 2nd. So substantial increases between the different harvest dates. At St. John, there was a greater amount of production earlier in the season, but only about 1,000-pound increase at these 2-week intervals between the early harvest date and the late harvest date. In summary, the Genesee plots had higher biomass yields than observed at St. John. In addition, plots that had winter peas alone or in mixture with other species usually had higher biomass production when compared to mixtures without pea or single species covers at Genesee, such as the oats or barley. The forage analysis is currently in progress, and once we have this information, we'll be able to make better conclusions about the overall yield and quality of these various cover crop mixtures. For the upcoming season, we are planning on completing the winter pea agronomy study, which is currently in its 3rd year, and we'll be able to make better conclusions as to the overall optimal planting date as well as seeding rates for winter peas in this region. In addition, we will continue monitoring winter cover crop emergence, collect forage samples, and analyze forage quality from plots that were planted in the fall of 2019. I will now shift to the pea forage project, which was conducted by Rebecca McGee with the USDA ARS in Pullman, Washington. Peas, especially winter peas, can be grown as a cover crop. They can be grown in a monoculture or as part of a mixture. The cover crop is frequently terminated by grazing or used as silage. Rebecca's program wants to start breeding winter peas that are suited for cover cropping and for grazing. However, they don't know much about the genetics of forage quality of peas, and so decided to do a genome-wide association study to identify markers and ultimately genes associated with quality characteristics. The diversity panel used in the study is the USDA single plant derived core collection. It has 330 diverse lines collected from around the world. The USDA program has previously genotyped the panel using genotyping by sequencing. The panel was grown using a randomized complete block design with 3 replications for 2 summers, 2018 and 2019, at the Plant Materials Center near Pullman, Washington. Each plot was harvested at full bloom. At harvest, morphological characteristics such as plant height, node of first flower, leaf type, number of leaflets, etc. was measured. The leaf area was determined and the fresh biomass was weighed. Subsamples of the harvest were taken and air dried. They were then ground and sent out for forage quality analysis at the University of Georgia. The genotyping by sequencing provided nearly 1 million SNPs. After filtering, there were 56,849 useful markers. Using these markers, the breeding program has started looking for associations with the traits of interest. The quality data was received in December and is still being analyzed. This table, though, shows the traits of interest and how many SNP markers are associated with each. Most of the SNPs occurred in clusters of 2 to 10 SNPs in specific regions, which likely only contain one gene influencing a particular trait. The breeding program will continue the analysis and hopefully be able to identify genes and their functions that are important for high quality, high yielding winter peas.